In this very in-depth forecast, Missouri is currently being monitored for severe weather as fast-moving isolated severe thunderstorms could bring heavy rainfall and isolated hail. Everything you need to know here on Gladiator WX. Hello everyone, welcome back to another weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for November 17th of 2025. For today, we currently have a marginal risk for a great portion of Missouri here into portions of extreme northwestern Arkansas and into portions of Illinois along the Mississippi River there. For our risk for today, we don't really have too much of a risk for tornadoes or too much of a risk for wind damage, but we are going to see a 5% risk for hail, which is going to be the primary risk for severe weather for today. For tomorrow, though, we do have a marginal risk for southern Illinois, southern Indiana, a great part of Kentucky, as well as extreme northern Tennessee there in the center, with a 2% tornado risk for the possibility of some isolated tornadoes, a 5% damaging wind gust risk with the possibility of some isolated damaging winds, and a 5% hail risk for the possibility of some isolated hail. For our day 3 outlook, we do have a marginal risk for a great portion of um, eastern Texas and central Texas into portions of southern Oklahoma there. This is going to be ahead of our risk for severe thunderstorms on the 20th, where we could see the potential for a round of severe thunderstorms before our main risk of severe thunderstorms on the 20th. Um, we'll have to wait to see how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms, because seeing a risk for severe thunderstorms right in the place that we're supposed to see an even greater risk for severe thunderstorms the day after does seem a little wonky, a little backwards, but we'll just have to see like how it affects our severe thunderstorm risk on the 20th. And then for our day 4, day 8 outlook, we currently don't have anything issued. Taking a look at our WPC outlooks, specifically our flash flooding or excessive rainfall forecast, for today we do have a slight risk for portions of coastal southern California there, mostly around the Los Angeles metro region, with a much larger, more messy marginal risk surrounding that for a great portion of California into southern Nevada there, including the Las Vegas metro region, as well as portions of western into central Arizona there. And then for tomorrow, we do have a slight risk for western Arizona there on the border of Nevada, maybe into some portions of the Las Vegas metro region, but we do have a marginal risk that does extend to portions of southern Utah and further into southern Nevada and into portions of southeastern California. Then we also have a marginal risk for flash flooding for that risk for severe thunderstorms tomorrow for a great portion of Kentucky. Extreme southern Ohio and southern Indiana into portions of north central Tennessee. And then for our day 3 outlook, or on the 19th, we currently have 2 marginal risk areas. One for portions of southern New Mexico, a great portion of Arizona, and then right on the border of California and Nevada there. Then for day 4, we have a quite large slight risk for flash flooding for Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, Missouri, and Kansas, as well as another marginal risk for Southern California there, including the Los Angeles metro region. Then for our day 5 outlook for flash flooding, we do have a marginal risk for flash flooding for Southern California again, and into portions of extreme southeastern Arizona or southwestern Arizona, and then a much larger marginal risk for Tennessee, Alabama, um, Mississippi, Georgia, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, the southern half of Illinois, and portions of eastern Missouri and Arkansas. Then for our winter weather outlook, specifically our probability for heavy snowfall greater than 4 inches, we're not really going to see some heavy snowfall in areas that are going to be too concerning. Just some higher elevated regions of Washington, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and California, and some portions of the New England states there. Maybe some surrounding lighter rain snowfall, but that shouldn't really be too concerning. And for tomorrow, a lot of the same thing, not really too concerned as far as snow goes. And then for our day 3 outlook, it seems to be a lot of the same thing. Taking a look at our 500 millibars and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today. Currently, we have a shortwave trough that is moving across the Central Plains here. Most of the Rockies, as of right now, it is mostly across the Central Plains and in the Rockies. With our storms expecting to be later this afternoon, this thing is really far behind our risk for severe thunderstorms, but this is going to be what kicks off our risk for severe thunderstorms. Right as the nose of that trough gets into our risk for severe thunderstorms, right in that region, that's when severe thunderstorms are going to fire. But that's going to be the reason for our storm initiation. We don't really have a whole lot of flow at our 500 millibars because our storms will only be really catching like right on the nose of this shortwave trough. So we do have some weaker 500 millibar flow, but there is 500 millibar flow, so we'll support some sort of shear. Um, but because this trough is so far behind, we are expecting to see storms quite late in the afternoon, probably into the AMs, the time frame like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., maybe even a bit later because of how far behind this trough is. But storms are still expected just pretty late in the afternoon. Taking a look at our 850 millibars or our low-level jet and how this is going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today, or mainly our lack of a tornado risk for today. You can see that we have a really nice low-level jet that's going to be ahead of the majority of the trough that would support the risk for a isolated tornado risk if we had surface-based CAPE. But given the fact that we aren't really going to see a whole lot of surface-based CAPE across this region, a lot of the surface-based CAPE will be mostly too far to the south, east to really support that much of a tornado risk. We will see some nice curved photographs, but mostly this will just help with initiating our storms into our speed shear and supporting that risk for hail. But if we did have surface-based CAPE, I wouldn't be surprised to see a risk for isolated tornadoes, but because we don't, we just aren't going to see that much of a risk for tornadoes. Taking a look at our 200 millibars and how that's going to affect our risk for hail for today. You can already see that we have some really nice, broad, strong 200 millibar flow across a lot of the region with 200 millibar flow upwards of 80 to 70 knots. This is definitely going to support quite a lot of speed shear across this region. Definitely support that risk for hail as well. Taking a look at our bulk shear and how this can affect our risk for hail for today, we have quite a lot of bulk shear across this region with bulk shear values upwards of 40 to 30 knots. Quite a lot of bulk shear, definitely going to support that risk for hail. Where we're going to see a lot of tilted up drafts and a lot of nice looking supercells, definitely going to support that risk for hail for today. Taking a look at our composite reflectivity for our various model members and how that's going to look for our risk for severe thunderstorms for today. Just mainly like what our storms are going to look like on radar for today. Starting off with our HRRR, you're about to see really quickly that we have quite a lot of uncertainty as far as this risk for severe thunderstorms, where storms are going to fire, where they're going to move to, and how they're going to look. This marginal risk is a very broad area for what storms might look like for today. If we were only going based off of like one HRRR run, like the most recent HRRR run, the marginal risk would probably look something, I think, something a bit more like this. But because there's the uncertainty, it looks a little bit more like that because of these various model runs. But for our HRRR, you can see, our risk for severe thunderstorms developing there, moving through our marginal risk area between bowing out. And then for our HRRR 6 hour, see that our storms fire significantly farther to the east. HRW and SSL, mostly in the same location as our HRRR. For our HRW, ARW, a lot of in the like same location there as well. For our HRF FV3, substantially farther to the east and the northeast there. And then for our NAM nest, does seem like it's gonna be a little bit more scattered across the marginal risk region, but developing in Kansas, which seems like a lot of the models want to develop in northeastern Oklahoma. NHR or HRW and SSL 12 hour. It looks pretty similar to, I forget which model run it was, but the one where it was kind of clustered across the marginal risk area, but substantially farther to the east. I think you get the point. There's going to be quite a bit of uncertainty as far as where storms are going to be, where they're going to look like, but anywhere in this region, is definitely going to see that risk for severe thunderstorms. I would just watch the weather for late this afternoon. Taking a look at our temperatures and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms and our instability. Right around the time that storms fire, or at least around the time that models want to agree that storms will fire, roughly, there's not really a whole lot of nice heat across this region. The warm sector looks kind of crappy, to be honest, which is why storms are going to remain mostly marginal. And then again, why we're not really going to be seeing a whole lot of surface-based cape and no tornado risk because the surface temperatures are just not that great. With surface temperatures in the 60s to the mid 50s and 50s across a lot of the marginal risk region, right around the times that storms fire. It's not really going to be a whole lot of surface-based instability. Not really going to be a whole lot of general instability either. However, some general instability that might linger from just like the shear that's in place, but then also just whatever heat we have across this region. It's going to be really, really banking on whatever instability we have to fire those storms. And if they do fire, storms are going to be rather weak and marginal, which is why we don't really have a bigger risk for severe thunderstorms for today. Taking a look at our dew points and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms as well, and our hail development as well. Um, as you can see, again, we don't really have a whole lot of moisture across this region. We do have some decent, more marginal, weaker moisture with dew points that are right along the border of where storms might fire, but just too far to the west for storms to really tap into them. So the storms are going to be using a lot more of these 50 dew points. They're not really going to be able to tap into these 60 dew points. Those 60 dew points is just too far to the west for storms to really be able to utilize. And then again, that's why our hail risk is going to remain marginal because hail is frozen water. We require moisture for hail, and because we don't really have a whole lot of moisture, that means a more marginal risk for hail. But then also the fact that generally less moisture means less instability, so less potential for great instability and just less potential for stronger severe thunderstorms. Taking a look at our lapse rates and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms or instability and our risk for hail. What we're looking for is these orange circles here. That is our lapse rates. Anything above 7 to 8 is really decent for severe thunderstorms and hail development. However, what we're going to be looking for today is going to be the lack of that because we don't really have a whole lot of decent lapse rates anywhere across this region, given the fact that we have some colder surface temperatures. So the lack of strong lapse rates means that hail will have to be thrown much farther, much higher into the atmosphere for it to freeze because stronger lapse rates means that the temperature, the higher you go up, decreases faster. The higher you go up, so we see a steeper temperature line on our soundings. However, given the fact that we don't really have a whole lot of lapse rates, we don't have decent lapse rates at all. That means that freezing layer is going to be much higher up in the atmosphere, and updrafts will have to be throwing hail much farther up into the atmosphere for it to be able to freeze and fall back down. So given the fact that we probably won't really have that much decent instability either, now not really a whole lot decent lapse rates, hail is really going to struggle again, which is why we're going to be seeing more of a marginal risk for hail, but definitely not a non-zero risk for hail. Taking a look at our cloud cover and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms, primarily our instability. We do have some cloud cover that is going to move into the region given some agitation with that low level jet that's going to be moving into the region. Again, not really going to see all that much of a risk for tornadoes despite that low level jet being there because we won't really have a whole lot of surface based cape. But we will see some agitation regardless with some mid-level cloud cover, probably a couple of cumulus clouds around this region. But it's not really going to be thick blanketing cloud cover. Sorry, low-level cloud cover. I forgot that the blue is low-level cloud cover. But we could see some openings that will allow the sun to reach the surface and heat up the ground and make the air a little bit more unstable, which will definitely be needed to support that risk for severe thunderstorms with the lack of heat across this region, and then furthermore, the lack of instability. So, with this low-level cloud cover, it definitely shows that there is going to be some instability across this region and some agitation to support some cloud cover, which will definitely be necessary if we want to see storms across this region. Taking a look at our most unstable cape and how that's going to affect the risk for severe thunderstorms for today. We're going to see quite a bit of decent most unstable cape across this region. That's going to be fueling our storms. So we're going to see instability values that are going to be upwards of the 1,000, reaching the mid 1,000s in some regions. Again, there is some instability about where storms are going to initiate and where they're going to move through, as well as when they're going to initiate. So there is some uncertainty there. But regardless, we still have some decent instability across this region that's going to be fueling and supporting our severe thunderstorms. However, keep in mind, most unstable cape is not surface-based cape. If we want to see for surface-based cape, we will have to look at that separately. Taking a look at our surface-based cape, I currently have us right around when storms are going to initiate. We don't really have a whole lot of surface-based cape anywhere. If storms do initiate further off to the west, down into Oklahoma, around the Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas border region, then there is the potential for a marginal tornado risk. However, that is extremely conditional based on which models are actually correct on where storms are going to fire this afternoon. If storms do fire down there, again, though, there is the possibility for a very marginal risk for tornadoes given weak surface-based instability and strong directional shear. However, again, very conditional, probably not going to happen. However, for the rest of the marginal risk region, right around storms initiate, we're not really going to be able to see a whole lot of surface-based cape, much at all. This is just going to be too far to the west by the time storms initiate, because these storms are going to be racing off east. They're going to be very fast-moving cells. So if they do develop in that very thin, warm sector of surface-based instability, which, again, conditional, probably not going to happen, they're going to race right on out of there. So we're going to have a very, very low tornado risk, probably none at all, because of the lack of surface-based instability. Taking a look at our 0 to 3 kilometer at ground level instability and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms. It's kind of just another model that's similar to our surface-based cape. We are looking at our ISRRR model on pivotal weather, though, and you can see, as I was talking about, if storms do develop, which is there's a chance that they might, depending on which model is actually correct. Again, there's uncertainty. If storms do fire in that warm sector around the Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas region, there is the possibility for an isolated tornado risk given strong surface-based instability and strong, at ground level instability as well. Could support so a brief spin up in the potential for tornado within the first 1 or 2 hours of the lives of these storms if they do happen to develop here. However, again, given the fact that there's a very low potential for them to because there is so much uncertainty. As storms move out of that region, you can see just how quickly they race out of there. Um, they're quickly going to lose that potential for tornadoes because they'll move into a region of weak surface-based instability. However, we do have strong, most unstable cape, so we certainly see too much of a problem with the risk for hail and fueling those strong updrafts because we have a decent amount of instability, just not a whole lot of surface-based instability. Taking a look at our other weather models, I actually found these just today on College of DuPage. I haven't really used College of DuPage too much. I mostly use it for GEFS. But they do have some decent models, and I like the way that their soundings look. However, I did find these hail models that I was not aware of before. So I'm assuming hail swath surface is how much hail, or what the size of hail is going to be at the surface, or the potential for hail at the surface. So if we look at this here, you can already see that we are going to see the potential for hail across this region, but the risk for hail is going to be quite marginal, with hail sizes that probably aren't going to get above an inch, mostly going to remain around half an inch, maybe even less, maybe greater, anywhere from, I think, half an inch to 0.75 inches. So, again, definitely a marginal risk for hail, but the risk for hail is definitely there. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Gladiator WX and join the Discord for any updates on Gladiator WX. If you have any questions in this forecast, please let me know in the comments and I will answer them. Or you could join the Discord and ask any questions there, and hopefully I'll be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.